How's it going, everybody? DJ K-Dub, Omaha, Wired Access Podcast with the All Access Granted.
I didn't want that to be the standard. I didn't want someone else in the room to set the standard. I always wanted to do that.
The journey to get there, I think, is something, that is amazing, Nick.
Let's get this podcast started.
That's right. It is DJ K-Dub, Omaha, Wired Access, All Access Granted. I greatly appreciate those who like, follow, share, and join us when we do these live podcasts. Today, I have Associated Head Coach Jaylen Reyes. Jaylen, welcome to the show, Husker Volleyball. We appreciate you joining in.
Thanks for having me, my friend. Good to be here.
Man, a lot has changed these past few years for yourself, but, I think what some fans tend to not really know about Jaylen is like where your love for volleyball started. Of course, your mom was the head coach for Hawaii. Now that's a connection with us here in Omaha or in Papillion. I don't know, but we have Stella out there doing some work for Hawaii volleyball. But your mom was a coach. Is that right?
It was actually my dad.
Okay, your dad. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. My dad, my dad was a coach. Coached for the University of Hawaii for, 20-something years. Most of those years were on the men's side. He started on the women's side back in like the early 1990s. And then the year 1992, the year I was born, actually, he started coaching the men's team to about 2009. So my junior year of high school. And then he started coaching women again at the University of Hawaii Hilo. Just dad grew up in Hawaii, grew up around volleyball, and obviously probably helped that my dad was a college volleyball coach. I always thought he had the coolest job in the world, getting paid to go to volleyball practice. Obviously, I'm learning a lot more that it's not just that, but that's kind of where, the love started. And I would also say just growing up in Hawaii, I grew up with a lot of really, really talented volleyball players that just so happen to be the same age as me. A lot of them are Olympians, especially on the men's side. So it's kind of the combination of both. I had a dad that was a coach, and a lot of my best friends were great volleyball players. So hanging out with them, I kind of had to step up my game too as a kid.
Oh, of course, you did go off to college. Now, can I ask, is there a reason you didn't play in Hawaii? And a lot of connection between BYU and Hawaii. There's a lot of big connections there. Why was BYU your place?
Yeah, well, at first, the reason I didn't go to Hawaii, I think a lot of it was just growing up there. I just wanted something different. I mean, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I just wanted something different and have a different experience. And you kind of tend to, if you grow up in Hawaii and you go to school and you go to UH, you kind of never leave, So I just always wanted to do something different, not thinking, hey, I'm going to live in the mainland someday, but just wanted something different. And then I think another reason was my dad, like we talked about, was the coach to my junior year of high school. And then he started coaching women. So it was like when I started playing volleyball, I always thought like, I'd go to UH and play for my dad. And then he ended up coaching, became the head coach at UH Hilo, coaching women. So, then it was like, well, my dad's not coaching there anymore. Why not, look to the mainland for some other opportunities and stuff like that. So that's kind of all it all came to be, me not playing at Hawaii. And I just had a bunch of friends that going through all these like USA youth volleyball teams when we were in high school. I had a couple buddies that decided to go to BYU. So, I mean, it was as simple as them talking me into going to college with them, if I'm being upfront. And
so, and what's the recruiting process like, or is there a recruiting process for men's volleyball that you're able to kind of help with current athletes nowadays?
Yeah, men's is a little different, and it might be different. I mean, I was recruited back in 2009, 2010, so it's kind of been a while now. Recruiting on the men's side definitely happens a little later. You'll have your, compared to women's volleyball where recruiting kind of happens earlier. One, in men's volleyball, if I'm being upfront, especially here in America, you have a lot of guys that find volleyball later in life, especially we all think we're going to the NBA when we're little, so some guys don't even start playing volleyball until like their sophomores, juniors, senior years of high school, just because, they might be a great athlete when they're younger, but they're a basketball player, right? Basketball. And, kind of depending on where you live, you might not find volleyball until later because maybe you just, you fall out of love with basketball, or maybe you don't have a great experience in AAU basketball, or I don't know. You might honestly sometimes. I know in California, I have a lot of buddies that started playing volleyball just because high school season of volleyball is in the spring, so it's after high school basketball season. So I know I have some friends that literally started playing volleyball because their volleyball friends in school, their teammates that played basketball with them, they talked them into just coming out for the volleyball team.
Try it out.
They just kind of they just try. They're great athletes, so they tried out. And they kind of fell in love with it. And then next thing you know, instead of playing AAU basketball over the summer, they're playing club volleyball. So that typically happens later. So, and just in general, right? I mean, you hear it with all these, especially, in basketball, you hear, I'll use Anthony Davis for an example, right? Anthony Davis, I think it was like well documented, like his sophomore year of high school, he was only like 6'1", 6'2". And then, right, he got all the guard skills, right? Because he was smaller. And then suddenly he becomes like 6'10" to 7 feet tall, right? As a senior in high school. So guys just like physically mature later, right? So as this college, as recruiters, or, when I was coaching on the men's side, or even when I was a player, everything just happens later because coaches wait because they want to see like who are going to be the best athletes. And versus women's, you kind of see it in younger ages, right? Women physically mature a little sooner than boys. So for me in the recruiting process, that's like the biggest difference is just in general, guys tend to get offers, commit later versus, women's volleyball. Typically it's usually after your sophomore year, junior year of high school, you're kind of deciding what schools you go into. And honestly, if it weren't for the rules, it'd probably happen even sooner.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, we had Harper on, and she talked about in 8th grade, she knew exactly where she was going, what she wanted to do. And those are a rare specimen, right? Rare.
Yeah, for sure.
When you think of yourself growing up, of course, volleyball was around you all life. Was there any other sports that you hope that you were better at, or you were good at, you just didn't pursue them?
I mean, I just like everybody, right? Like I talked about basketball. I grew up playing basketball. My dad, I always kind of joked, my dad pushed me to try to play basketball so he didn't have to end up coaching me. It was like he got enough.
It's the opposite of what most people.
Yeah, I know. I was like the opposite kid where everyone thought I started playing volleyball because of my dad. I almost started playing volleyball in spite of him. You're kind of all jokes aside. It was like he didn't really like he didn't push, like he loved watching me play basketball. I think he also just loved like probably doing something different, right? All day he's around volleyball, and now it's like, oh, he's got to go to his son's middle school volleyball practice, right? I can imagine him just like dreading that. So basketball, honestly, I mean, growing up in Hawaii, you're around, I mean, if beach volleyball counts, right? I played that a lot. I actually grew up surfing a ton. I really enjoyed surfing for the obvious reasons.
Did you do competition surfing?
Kind of not really. I wasn't like, we had the dream to. It was like one of those things where you kind of start doing it later in high school. And by then I was already, you surf, you just surf recreationally. And then contests usually don't start until like your later middle school, high school, in terms of like getting sponsored, So like growing up, it was, man, I want to be on Team Billabong. Like that was like the goal, right? But once I started playing volleyball, it was like all the time I spent on the beach, I started playing beach volleyball. So I guess as a kid, I played golf when I was younger. Now I've like really, really gotten kind of back into it. But when I was a 7th and 8th grader, I actually played like intermediate golf for our school team. And then my freshman year, I was actually on the varsity golf team. But then volleyball used to be in the fall. It was a fall sport, and golf was a spring sport. And then my sophomore year, they moved volleyball to the spring. So I couldn't play high school golf anymore, which I kind of took a hiatus from golf, but then these last 5 or 6 years, I've kind of gotten back into it. So I think most people nowadays would jokingly say about me, like Jaylen would rather spend more time around a golf course than he would be a volleyball court, which on some days is probably not wrong, if I'm being honest. but definitely better at my day job than the job I wish I had, which was playing golf. But
Yeah,
I kind of did. I mean, I grew up playing soccer and stuff like that. Canoe paddling is another one that is a kind of a big one in Hawaii that I grew up doing. I always kind of kick myself. Like, I wish I got more into that in high school, not more recreationally and club wise, not as a job, but wish I did that a little more just because, I could be, I feel like I would have been more useful of a waterman whenever I get to go home. So kind of everything, honestly. Hawaii is kind of you get a mixed bag of things just because the weather is so perfect there all the time. You're probably not going to grow up being good at skiing or snowboarding, but other than that, you can kind of do everything there.
You might be able to put it together with being able to surf. I mean, the snowboard.
I can snowboard a little bit. Going to BYU, I snowboarded a little bit. Honestly, it's way harder than surfing, in my opinion. And us Hawaiians, we don't like being strapped to the board. We like to be able to jump off of it whenever we're in trouble. We like to just be able to bail and jump off.
Bail out. And you brought up a good thing about volleyball that I think here in the lower 48 states don't always know. Why do you think men's volleyball hasn't made something across the nation? Obviously, we see it slowly growing. We see it, but it's bigger in certain areas. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it's not right. The three big male sports, right, are football, basketball, baseball, right? So some states have it in the fall. You run into football, right? That's the cool sport, and then, baseball in the spring, right? And then typically, I think the big thing is usually men's volleyball, the sport that it crosses over with the most is basketball, right? Because they kind of have the same players. You kind of want people that are long, that could jump, right? Taller is better, right? Those are basketball players. It's just basketball is just so big, right? Basketball is huge. It's I mean, like every sport nowadays, it's a 12-month-a-year thing. So I think that's it. I just think in the big cities, the biggest cities besides LA, and even LA still has a huge basketball and football culture. The big cities that have the most kids, that have the best athletes, basketball and football. I mean, obviously, depending on, Chicago, you probably more basketball. If you're in Dallas, if you're in, those Atlanta, those big cities in the South, football, right, is kind of king. I think it's that, I still think, honestly, it is labeled a girl sport for the most part. And I'm not saying that to be funny. Like, I think it is. And to a degree, there's way more girls that play it. I think it's just the culture. And then volleyball kind of for the most part, it started in areas that like beach volleyball is a big thing, right? So It's like guys grew up playing, on the beach. That's how they kind of found, even guys that play volleyball here in Nebraska, guys that are from Nebraska, how they found volleyball besides like watching the Huskers play, how they started playing is usually getting dragged out to Spikes or one of the beach bars here in Nebraska because their girlfriends or their sisters or, their mom played. Right. So that's how most people find beach volleyball, especially volleyball on the men's side, is through the beach side of things. So that's why you typically look at, the coastal areas that are big in volleyball, Hawaii, Northern California, Southern California, or like places where beach volleyball is a big deal, like Arizona or Florida. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of typically, I think another reason, honestly, is probably Title IX, right? Title IX is kind of a big thing, right? There's not, it's kind of like, hey, what is it, the chicken or the egg, right? What came first? I don't know. But the fact that, hey, there's not a lot of opportunities for men to play or make money or get scholarships in college. So then it's like, well, then why have all these teams, right? Why have it as a high school sport? It's also just not a high school sport. It's not a sanctioned high school sport. And I would bet over half the states. I know state of Nebraska is working toward it becoming a sanctioned sport. I know. So like when I was going to school at BYU in 2012 to 15, boys high school volleyball wasn't even a thing. It wasn't a sanctioned sport, which is crazy because at BYU, I mean, not to toot our own horn, but we were really good. Like we went to 3 Final Fours, and it wasn't until like my sophomore year I realized it wasn't even a high school sport, which is crazy because growing up in Hawaii, it's a huge deal. It's almost as big as football. So. And I know in California, it's huge, obviously being more West Coast driven, but I don't have a specific answer. I think it was a combination of all these things. And, if you're a great athlete and you're a male, typically, I mean, there's a reason why a lot of us volleyball players, we all think we're going to be NBA players, right? You see it on TV all the time. Obviously, there's a ton of money in the sport of basketball, whether you look at college scholarships, obviously what you're hearing some of those college basketball players are making now. And then obviously you have the NBA, right? So it's just one of those things where, I think a lot of people try basketball, and if they can't do it, or if they don't come from a volleyball family, then they find volleyball. But it's just, there's not as much opportunities to do it, right? There's 40-ish, maybe just under 40 Division I schools that have it, probably less than that.
Compared to your basketball, where you got not
only, that's nowadays it's like that's 3 power conferences, right? That have men's basketball on top of, there's over 300 Division I basketball teams. So it's just an opportunity thing, right? And where there's opportunities, there's money, and there's like avenues to do it, and there's more avenues to play other sports on the male side versus women's. There's a ton of opportunity, and I think that's why women's volleyball is such a growing sport. But I don't know. I don't really have a perfect answer for that. I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
No, I think you put it out there. I mean, I'm now going on my 4th year where I DJ actually here locally in Papillion at a sand volleyball Friday nights. We call it On the Patio.
What's
Senate Sandbar? Senate Sandbar.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Friday night, come hang out one day, but I get to set the atmosphere, and what I love is open format music. So I always just get to play, and I'm always looking to make someone else move. If I don't do that on the next song, then I'm not doing my job. And
love it.
But what it really says is what you say, though. It really showed and explains it more to me in that fashion. I do watch guys come out there, and I watch them if they're their first time, they're kind of like slowly getting out there. But once they see that there's other guys that are because it's a co-ed group, right? It's co-eds. They see the other guys. They start getting in that little competition phase of themselves, and
love it.
You see them getting all out, and it just takes it to another level. Of course, out at BYU, you made a lot of statements there about how good you guys were. How did you get that part of opportunity just to be able to get that scholarship and understand that it was something that isn't on all locations, and be able to take it to use it and maximize it for yourself in the sport? And did you think beyond BYU that you had continuous opportunity to still play?
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, I come from a place where like boys volleyball is like as big as football, right? Like in our minds, right? Not literally, but just like in our minds, right? So like, for an example, I grew up playing with or against 4-5 guys that have all been Olympians, whether it's indoor volleyball or men's volleyball. And I mean, countless guys that all played at Hawaii, Stanford, USC, UCLA, UC Irvine, Long Beach State, Loyola, Chicago, like guys that like I just grew up with now. So like the pickup games were legit. I mean, it was like, I can't, you know what I mean? I can't, it'd be like, okay, you're growing up in like LA or like Rutgers Park in New York, and a pickup basketball game. And it was like, you're going to be an All-American one day. You're going to be a McDonald's All-American one day. 2 guys are already playing in the NBA. Like those are the level of games that I got to like, let's just say I was on the bottom part of that totem pole, but like I got to play against each and every day. So for me, if I'm being upfront, it was like I could hang with everybody, or here, I would say this. I kept getting the text to come back. I'm not saying I was definitely not like leading the charge, but
you weren't the last pick.
No, so hey, and I don't even mind being, if I were to like those that know, even if you were picked, that's awesome. Even if you're the last pick,
Respect.
But so just growing up there, you just kind of like, I mean, our club practices, we would have college coaches there all the time, which was saying something because we were all the way on the islands. I mean, we weren't, the only school that could recruit us easily was Hawaii just because they're right there, So, I mean, we were really good. Our club team was really good. And I was part of that team that was called Outrigger Canoe Club. And we were really, really talented. We had some really talented players. 2 of them were Olympians. One's on the beach. One's still the men's setter for the national team. And just, I think for us, it was just like, there was this confidence that, hey, I'm not as good as some of these guys, but man, there's not a lot of players that can hang in this gym each and every day, So I think that was it. At the same time, like, I feel like I grew up pretty humble. I still probably, I didn't know where I stood, like most 17, 18-year-olds don't. And, I just picked a school as BYU. And I think the other thing too was I always got invited to do some of these like USA volleyball things growing up that now it's funny. I luckily get to coach it. So it's like, whenever I talk to the kids, I'm like, hey, I literally was in your shoes one day, So, I got to do all these different things that, did I think I was the best? No, but I think for me, it was like, hey, I was there and I got to do all these things. And, I got to make some really cool friends. And I think a lot of those better players really enjoyed playing with me, So I always felt like, hey, I don't know where this recruiting process is going to take me, but I feel like I'll get a shot somewhere. And once I get a shot somewhere, I'm going to try to take advantage of it, which for me, I think I did.
Of course, post-college, what was it like for you as far as what you thought for your goals? Or what were some things that you saw in your vision? And if you look back now and, what version of yourself would you be shocked to see coaching at the level you are today?
For sure. Well, okay. So going through college, really, really good. In terms of our team, we were really, really successful. Won a bunch of conference championships, went to the Final Four, national championships. I always, by the time I was like a junior in high school or a junior in college, I knew I wanted to continue in volleyball, right? So I don't know if I wanted to play or coach. I kind of the plan was originally like keep playing, go overseas and play, and then get into coaching. But as I got older, it was like, I always wanted to coach. Like the dream is one day to coach in the Olympics. It was like never really to play in the Olympics. It was like to coach. So once I graduated in May of 15, there was a coaching change on our staff. Our head coach stepped down. BYU actually hired the coach that took the women's program to the national championship. They lost to Penn State actually, but the coach that Sean Olmstead, who took the women's earlier that fall, took the women's team to the national championship game. They hired him over, and there was a staff change, and he actually had an opportunity, had a job opening, and I reached out to him, and I kind of figured instead of going to play, if I could start coaching, and I knew the team right after me was going to be really, really good, which they ended up being. We lost in the finals to Ohio State that following spring. I just had this like thought of, hey, BYU men's volleyball is going to be really good, and these next few years, it's going to be loaded with talent. I coached there for 3 years, and we went to the Final Four each and every year and lost in the finals twice. So and not necessarily because of my coaching, because of just the pure talent they had on the team. My senior year, we were loaded with a lot of really talented freshmen that weren't quite ready yet. But like those next couple of years, they got really good. Few of them played on the national team. So I always just thought like, hey, if I can get there, I can kind of work my way up pretty quickly. Never thinking, okay, the next job I would take 3 years later was the assistant coach here at Nebraska. But honestly, like, the plan that I kind of thought about when I was a senior in high school, when I decided to stop playing, not go overseas and play pro and start coaching, it's kind of happening, if I'm being honest. I didn't know all the details, but I just thought, hey, this job would be really good. It helped me get a really, really good position in women's volleyball, and maybe I can move my way up from there. Did I think I'd get to coach 8 seasons in a row at Nebraska? No. But in general, honestly, this was the plan, and I do miss playing. I do wish I went to play, but if I had to go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't change anything for the world because I feel like I have like the best job in the country.
Well, and if you look back at even making that decision to go play, what was that talk like with your dad, and how did that come about? What you said before he didn't want you to play the game. He didn't want you to follow in his footsteps.
That was because he didn't want to coach me. I think after that he's like, whatever.
He's like, do what you do.
One thing my dad was always really good about is like everything I felt like I've done is always been my decision, So like even when I got asked to start playing volleyball, a club reached out to him and he asked me, and he just kind of left it up to me. Whenever he decided to coach me, it was like me asking him. He's never My dad is like the opposite of one of those involved parents, if I'm being honest. Like, I think I'll be upfront with you. My dad probably came to 10 in 4 years, 10 total of my college games in person.
It's crazy you say this because this is the same thing Tommy Armstrong said about his mom. She only seen
and it's not like he wasn't invested. It was just like, I'm not going to say he didn't care.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where it was like, I think he always felt like this is Jaylen's thing. It's not, it's not his thing. He's here because of the hard work he did, not because of who his dad is,
So you went opposite of what most people think you got to do. Sometimes, connections. You need to have the inside, the in to get you in. I got you.
So, I think through this I think he just said, "Hey, whatever you want to do," and like makes total sense. But he always knew I wanted to coach, and he always just felt like, "Hey, man, if you think you're going to be really good, why not do this?" The other thing is like the position I play. It's so hard to like really make it. Liberos is really tough internationally to play. You don't get paid the best. You always are on like a 1-year contract. It's kind of like you always have to wait to the end of the free agent market, if I'm being honest, just because I'm not saying it's not an important position, but in terms of like comparing it to a setter, an outside hitter in men's volleyball, it's lower down the list. So I just thought it's also like a job where, it's just going to be all over the place versus like, hey, in coaching, I feel like if I end up somewhere good, maybe I can skip ahead of some other people that started coaching before me because I ended up landing in a good spot with a lot of talented individuals at the right time, which I ended up doing at BYU. And, luckily enough, I'm getting to do the same thing here at Nebraska.
Well, and you think of your transition from BYU to Nebraska, why girls volleyball and why Nebraska for you?
Well, women's volleyball is just bigger, right? We talked about that earlier. There's just more opportunities. So, there's a lot more. There's probably in some of the, Power 4 conferences, there's as many good jobs in one of those conferences as the entire country for men's, So there's just more opportunity. It's more stable, especially in these day and times where, hey, we're entering these like revenue share NIL times. Where's men's volleyball going to end up in the pecking order? Where's women's volleyball going to end up in the pecking order? Obviously, that's going to depend on the school you talk to. But, it's just at the end of the day, there's 40 D1 teams in men's, and I'm probably rounding up, and there's over 300 in women. So if you just do the math, right? It's just,
give you the odds.
Yeah, so it's just a bigger sport in terms of opportunity. And then, at the time, Nebraska was just like I think even to this day, if I had the choice again, it's such a no-brainer. It's like where people care. I grew up in Hawaii where people care about volleyball. I played at BYU. We played in front of a packed, we played in this arena called the Smith Fieldhouse. It was about just under 5,000. It reminds me a lot of I've never been to a game here in the Coliseum, but it's described in similar ways, especially for our men's team at BYU. It's packed. It's kind of a really good home court advantage. It's loud. The crowd's right on top of you, just like the Coliseum was. So went there, played there. Men's volleyball was a big deal there. So people cared. And then now I'm at Nebraska where obviously a ton of people care. So I think it was also just I kept climbing in terms of, and I just think for me, it was a no-brainer because, honestly, it was a better job than I thought I would get at the time. It was one of those things where it was like, this could not be true, How
did it come true for you? What was the process from you getting from BYU to Nebraska? What's something maybe most people don't know unless they really dig deep for you?
Process was, it was interesting. It was, so men's volleyball, for people that don't know, is in the spring. So we play in the spring. So we're opposite of the girls' season. So we start in January, and hopefully you're playing to the first weekend in May. That's the weekend of the Final Four of the National Championship. President's Day weekend back in 2018, I get a text from a 402 area code number. This is a true story. No idea what 402 was. And it was this text message basically saying, the coach before me was going to leave. Are you looking to get a list together? Are you interested? And then at the bottom, it just said JC. So I'm like, what? And so I Google 402 area code, and it's like Lincoln/Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm thinking JC. And I remember leaning over to my other fellow assistant going, you think this is from John Cook? So just like kind of respond, obviously tell him I'm interested. I mean, it's like the pinnacle, right? It's like if I was.
Did you know about Nebraska at that time?
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up in volleyball, right? Like I grew up in this might not be a fair comparison, and I'm not speaking about everybody, but if men's volleyball is so small, if you're a men's volleyball person, you know about the women's side. But if you're on women's volleyball, you don't necessarily know the men's side, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But men's volleyball, because a lot of us to like get to these levels of men's volleyball, because there's so few opportunities, it's like you kind of have to really love volleyball, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you love volleyball, and then of course, like I grew up with it, right? My dad was a coach. My dad coached on the women's side before I was born too. So you like John Cook was like somebody you like look up to, right? It was like I'm a young football coach and Nick Saban asked me to interview to be on his staff. It was like one of those things where like, did you know Nick Saban? I'm like, yeah, if I was a football coach. Like if you don't know Nick Saban, like you're probably living under a rock, It's the same thing as with Nebraska, So, and you knew about Coach Dunning at Stanford, Coach Rose at Penn State. I mean, John was like one of the legends, right? So, the biggest reason was just getting to work for him. I mean, the program and then getting to work for, 10, 15 years from now, 20, 30 years from now, when even I retire and people talk about John Cook, I'll get to tell my grandkids that I got to work for John Cook. I was one of his last assistant coaches that got to work for him, So,
what do you remember about the interview?
What do I remember? I remember a lot.
Do you have the daylight mark probably too?
No, I don't remember specific days. Like it was also interesting because I'm also coaching a team, right? We're like in season. So I remember like Zooming with him and the staff for the first time. I remember him making me do one of those, like, it was like, I don't know if it's like a personality is probably not the right word, but like I did one of those interviews where basically you're on the phone for like over an hour and they basically ask you like 25 questions, but they ask you them over and over again in like different ways.
Yeah.
And they want to check like your answers, if that makes sense. So that way, really, there's no right or wrong answer. The only way you can really get it wrong is if you answer the questions wrong or like different every time they come up,
Yeah.
I remember doing that. What else do I remember? Obviously I went out there. We had a couple days. We had like a Monday off. So I flew out there like on a Sunday and I interviewed like in person Sunday night. Picks me up from Omaha airport, drive to the venue in Lincoln, met his wife, Wendy. We had dinner and stuff like that. And they took me downtown. They picked me up in the morning. And then I pretty much just did an interview all day with some of the players at the time, rest of the staff, got to meet some people on campus, walked around the facilities for the first time, and stuff like that. And, got to meet, there's like our support staff is so big. So got to meet, at the time, the versions of them. Some of those people I met that day, I still work with today. So I remember kind of just being wowed and do remember it was really cold because it was like February here in Nebraska. So, or it was like early March, maybe it was early March now, but I just remember getting to talk to him and, how, obviously he grew up in California, knew about men's volleyball, had a lot of buddies. He used to, he grew up playing beach volleyball and talking to him about all those kind of stories. So there's not like one thing I remember, but I just kind of remember that process. And it was very thorough, like really, really, I think I got on this was before Zoom was a thing. So I got on like 3 Skype interviews. One was with him and the staff. One was without him. It was like all the it was all like the females of the staff. So it was like our director of ops, Lindsay. It was his daughter at the time, Lauren. It was my former coworker, Kayla Banworth, who's ended up working with. She was an assistant at the time. And then our trainer, Jolene. So it was like I interviewed with the girls, literally all the girls.
Did he ever admit how he found you in the whole mix?
No, he didn't. I have a couple of like, I think honestly, he was looking for somebody in men's volleyball. And I think he probably just sent out a couple of texts to people he knew that I'm mutual friends with and knew. And I think that's kind of how, I guess I never asked him. To this day, I've never actually asked him.
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, of course, you knew what the culture was here in Nebraska. You know, it's nationally known for its culture. What are some things that fans might not understand? What are some of the parts that are intentional, and what are parts that are earned daily for the team when you look
about
at
the culture?
Culture, yeah.
There's a lot more that goes into it than just the volleyball piece. You know, like the girls, they receive a lot for sure. You know, but they're asked to do a lot, and a lot of the stuff they do is it's not just showing up to practice for 2.5 hours and then playing games on the weekend, you know, or Wednesday nights. You know, there's a lot of sacrifice that these girls all year long give up. You know, they give up a lot. They give up things that a normal 18 to 22-year-old gets to do. They give up summers. They give up, you know, they give up spring break. They give up, you know, they give up time with their family. But I think this program also gives them a lot, you know, but it's definitely there's pluses and minuses for sure, you know, and there's a lot of time sacrifice that a lot of people have to give up, you know, to keep this volleyball program, you know, toward the top where we hope it to be.
How do you feel like you help the team and these athletes through your process of what you've learned, the confidence and toughness that are built when no one else is watching?
Well, I hope I help the team. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just like making sure that they genuinely know that I believe in them. You know, I love them and I believe in them, and not just as volleyball players, but as human beings. I think that's, for me, at the end of the day, like it starts and ends there, right? If you can't achieve that as a coach, then, you know, like it's all kind of fluff if they don't do that, and you can't achieve that. So for me, that's where I think I help them. I think some of them really, really believe that I feel that way about them. And, you know, after that, you know, you can move mountains with them when they do that, but that takes time, and that takes trust, and that takes stuff that's super fragile that you have to manage each and every day. So without that, I don't think I can help them. I don't think I can help this volleyball program. So that's a big thing for me.
Well, when you look at that and you maybe take it into a match day, what's one habit you maybe push for your players to understand that fans should never see from them? Especially in this day and where, I mean, you have some of the best players that could just be watching for a whole match. You have, you know, all eyes on those players that might be being watched because they're not getting to play. I'm pretty sure you have to make sure the respect and the understanding of what your guys' goals are and what you guys are, why the whys, right? Like the players have to understand the whys, why they might not be in this, why, you know.
Yeah, I think just, well, you know, open communication, I think is really, really important. Coach Cook was good at that. Coach Danny's really, really elite at that, if I'm being honest, in terms of having tough conversations with people. You know, and it's not, I don't know, like, I think everyone sees us, right? We get to play in these really nice venues, and obviously Devaney is, in my opinion, the best place to play volleyball in the world. And, you know, they get to see all the really cool things, and they get to see the cool interviews and the, you know, the artsy fartsy Instagram posts and all that. They see the glamour, right? Yeah, they see all that, right? But they don't, right? They don't see the sacrifice some of them make. They don't see the tough conversations. They don't see sometimes necessarily the price they have to pay to get to where they need to get to, you know? So I think that, and just like the tough conversations that us coaches have to have with them sometimes to make sure, hey, whether it's we need you to do this to help us get better, or we need you to do this for you individually to get better, or sometimes it's a role, like a communication about a role that maybe they're not super stoked on at the time, right? Like a lot of people don't see all that kind of stuff. And, there's a lot of calculation and there's a lot of, there as much as coaching is analytical, we're humans. It's like at the end of the day, if it's so close, we kind of always say, I always kind of say, Danny at the end of the day has to put someone's number on the piece of paper on the lineup. Right. And sometimes it might be so close. We have so many talented individuals that at the end of the day, the coaching staff or Danny in particular has to make a call. And sometimes she's got to just go with her gut, So
do you guys go with that gut issue sometimes with just even how warmups can happen and how like, are you getting better and better at reading your player styles? Because not everybody is ready every game and not everybody, they say.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't think it's just like, it's not just game day too, right? It's for us, it's like, are you going to show up each and every day? Right. So a lot of these decisions too are also made based on maybe certain days that people don't see, right? How come you're not doing this? Well, if you're around us 6 days a week and not just watching for the 2 hours on Friday night, maybe you will see. But I also get like people don't get to see all that stuff, right? People don't. Those people have lives too, and they tune into volleyball at 7:00 on Friday, and and I also understand that. As a fan of other sports, I do the same thing. We all do the same thing. But as coaches, we gotta kind of make do with what the hand that we're dealt. We obviously have a great hand to deal with here at Nebraska. But there's sometimes we make decisions that maybe people don't quite understand, but I feel like a lot of the decisions it's based on merit and based on, hey, certain kids earn certain things, and whether it's playing time, whether it's like starting role, whether it's first off the bench, whether it's being a captain, like all these things, we try to feel like, hey, sports, the best thing about sports is, it can be very inclusive. And at the end of the day, a lot of it's based on merit, especially when, one of our biggest priorities obviously is to win volleyball matches. So
when you look at your career these past 8 years with Nebraska and you think of your time with Coach Cook and now DBK, what's the one thing that you think Coach Cook was able to get you to highly improve on yourself that maybe you didn't see prior to coming to Nebraska? What's one thing that you've been able to elevate even this last year with DBK, because obviously she saw something that has now made you the associated head coach?
John, or Coach, has definitely made me a better public speaker. And if he's watching this, he'll laugh because I think he'll even agree with me, because there's certain words I used to say during these things that I believe I haven't said once yet. But all jokes aside, I think that he's given me and I kind of knew this about Nebraska going in, but it's one thing when you really see it is like college programs, if you can elevate them to a certain level, you like they become a business, right? And the head coach almost becomes like the CEO, right? They're not just a coach anymore, So I think that was a big thing of like everything is calculated and everything can be used to elevate a program, or I mean so much so like you can elevate your program monetarily in a bunch of different ways, and especially nowadays that's really important, So I think the other thing too is just going back to the coaching side of things. Great coaches, in their simplest form, they're great teachers, So, Jaylen, you need to become a better teacher. You need to learn how to teach, and you need to learn how to teach different people certain things. And maybe you're teaching one player, try to do the same things, but you probably have to learn how to teach them differently if they're different people, So the importance of that. Danny, the biggest thing I've learned from Danny so far is, I kind of mentioned it, was just, and you kind of know this, but like with her, you can see the power of like having upfront, honest conversations all the time, and even if they're hard, like even if they're, and you know this, but it's cool to see it in action all the time, So she'll have a conversation with a player. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable. Maybe it's not what the player wants to hear. We all sit in it for a little bit, but in the long run, it ends up working out much better. There's no miscommunication. Everyone's on the same page. And sometimes things are just squashed pretty quickly because she might be able to beat you to the punch or beat the kid to the punch there, So, this, we all say it, but we all know it doesn't happen all the time, right? Danny, in my opinion, that's like one of the most, there's a lot of things that make her elite, but that's one of the things that make her, in my opinion, really, really successful.
She's taken that parent role to a whole nother level where you're able, we know it before you tell me. So we're going to talk about it now. So then we don't have to come to a halt,
right?
And keep the competition and keep everything going. I mean, that from the outside looking in, it just continues to show the well-oiled machinery of understanding with your players and understanding where, sometimes people who haven't been coaches or people who haven't been a general manager, who haven't been that leader, they don't understand that simple rule of what can be because they haven't seen it to believe it, but you're seeing it right in front of you. And it's just setting that continued example that you guys are going to be able to roll. Of course, we've had 3 of your players on our episodes and we're grateful. The first one was Lindsay Krause. And when you watch Lindsay Krause navigate through adversity when you were with her, what does her journey teach younger athletes about identity beyond stats?
Yeah. Linz was awesome. Linz was a great human being, great family. Obviously she came from La Vista. Lindsay, she had some difficulties here. She, faced a few injuries throughout her career here, which kind of, nagged her. She was having a great year, her junior year, and just had an unfortunate ankle injury like midway through, which was awful. She went through a position switch her freshman year to her sophomore year. So I don't know. I think Lindsay, at the end of the day, it was like she loved Nebraska volleyball and still to this day loves Nebraska volleyball. And she's, at the end of the day, like kind of the epitome of no one's bigger than Nebraska volleyball, right? And we're seeing this now, right? Even Nebraska volleyball is bigger than John Cook. It's, now it's in the hands of somebody else, and there's always going to be the next star player that comes through here. So I think Lindsay was an epitome of that, a local girl that decided to stay home and go to Nebraska. Obviously grew up wanting to be a Cornhusker, got to live out her dream. And at the end of the day, even when maybe things didn't go her way, she was still like an A+ Nebraska Cornhusker. And the program always came first to Lindsay.
What do you remember about being a coach that continues to teach belief when confidence takes hits on these young athletes?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, like belief is free, and belief in yourself is free. And, you just stress at the end of the day, coaches can help foster confidence for sure. So that's something I understand as a coach, but also try to preach to the players that, it's at the end of the day, confidence is something that's in you, right? And really no one can reach in there and take it from you, Obviously coaches can help foster it. There's things that can help hinder it, but confidence is like this little flame that really no one can touch in yourself, right? So sure, there's certain environments that we as coaches hope to create to, help, let it breathe if per se, but at the end of the day, confidence is something and belief is something in yourself that it doesn't cost anything, right?
Yeah. Well, the next one we interviewed was Harper Murray. Harper arrived, of course, with enormous expectations. How, as a coach, do you feel you help elite recruits turn the pressure into fuel instead of fear? And I say this because she mentioned your name directly in our interview of how you have helped her develop who she is becoming outside of the game and just as a person.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of attention that certain players get, like her or even the program, there's a lot of expectations and there's a lot of, outside pressure that comes with that. Coaches feel it too, but I think there's a little bit of just keeping the kids focused on the things that they can control, and the things that really matter. Sure, certain things matter to certain people than others, right? Some people are a little more outside driven. Some people are a little more, driven within. But for us, it's let's focus on the day-to-day and certain things that we can control to get better. And at the end of the day, that will take care of a lot of outside things and shift your focus on things that you can actually control. So I know it sounds cliche, but like controlling the controllables and getting the athletes to just stay concentrated on that helps a ton, in my opinion. It helps me as a coach. When I start worrying about the consequences of what happens if we don't do this or we do this, or, hey, if we win this, then we get this, or if we get this recruit, it's to a degree, I know it's hard because it's human nature to always kind of worry about what's next or focus on what could be next. But just focus on the things you can control, and that's today.
Well, I like that you brought up one thing about, the question of athletes coming in. What's something you think fans misunderstand about highly ranked athletes coming into this program?
I love the ranking system, recruits. I think people work really hard, but it's just, I don't know. We're not necessarily bringing in athletes because they're just ranked really high, and they're not one of those things that really affect if we're going to recruit somebody or not,
I love that answer. That's it.
It's just, I don't know. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter because it's cool. It's a nice, remember I talked about glamour Instagram posts that don't really mean winning or losing, but I get it. Everyone has to do it. We do it. So, I'm probably a hypocrite for saying that, but it's, they got to get better. And some of them have to get better quicker than others because certain positions that need to play quicker. Some of them maybe are a little more developed, but every one of them have to get better because they're not, I don't, hopefully I'm not hurting any of those kids' feelings, but they're not good enough to produce at this level consistently, being as good as they are playing just normal high school club volleyball. And that's not a shot at anybody. That's just the truth, and
keeping it 100,
so it's one of those things where the ranking systems are awesome, but I kind of forget them after they get here, so
thank you for that message. Seriously, I have Coach Saunders, who's always been a great part of Wired Access, and she's always been a great co-host. And we talked rankings, and that is the one thing that she's like, these kids get in their mind that they have to meet some expectation of someone else's instead of their own, and then the coaches who are recruiting. Right. We'll get you on this one with Rebecca Alec. She talks about fighting for her spot and how do you cultivate the mindset without creating division amongst these great athletes? Of course, that's a leadership side as well. How do you feel you were able to help that?
Yeah, that's tough, right? You're trying to, it's a competitive environment, right? You want this competitive environment so that way people push each other, but at the same time, I think just again this volleyball program is bigger than one person, and everybody on the team is equally as important to us achieving certain goals, and we can't do it without each and every one of them. And I think we've done a really good job of that, if I'm being upfront and honest. And that doesn't mean all of them have to be best friends. If I'm being upfront, I don't think that's also realistic. I think people that talk about that are kind of, I want to ask, have you been around a high level team, that everyone's best friends and everyone's going to be in each other's weddings? And I just don't think that's realistic. I've been around some really, really good teams, and it's not, sometimes people want to kill each other, and that's okay. As long as, again, one person doesn't become, or two people don't become bigger than the team, So I just think it's an everyday thing. There's not one magic way to do it, right? And it's not easy, because if everyone could do it, then everyone would be getting trophies, So
No, I tell.
I don't really have a perfect
coworkers all
answer
the
for you.
time.
I think it's just it's a day-to-day thing. I think it's a thing that you have to like nurture each and every day.
I tell my coworkers all the time, you don't have to like everybody in every facet of their life. You can like them as a good coworker. You can not like them as the boss if they're the boss, if they're not doing the job that you expect. And you don't have to like them outside of the job. But when it comes down to your, like, because my part-time job, I dispatch live flight helicopters all across the United States, done it for 14 and a half years. No matter what, as long as we're saving lives, and that's where it's most important, that's where you got to respect each other, as if they're doing the job at the same as you do it. And I feel that's probably one of the biggest things there that you're saying is, because of course I know how it goes. All of a sudden, so-and-so unfollowed so-and-so. It's the biggest news of Huskers. Oh my gosh. And you're like, no, this is life. This is life after being a Husker. Things change. The people that you are around is not always the same. And especially with the dogs that you guys got. I mean, you guys got, the best of the best. And they're all wanting the same time. They all want their time. Well, here's a few things to kind of get you out of here. When you look at yourself, who believed in Jaylen Reyes before the job and titles did?
Jaylen did. I mean, there's a lot of other people, but Jaylen did, if I'm being honest, But I think my parents, coaches at BYU took a shot on me. Coach Cook took a shot on me, So I would say Jaylen first. But coaches, parents, and Coach Cook and Coach Sean Olmstead at BYU, they're the biggest ones. Kind of, I would thank to get me where I'm at today. But like I'm dead serious. I think at the end of the day, like I don't get here if I don't believe in myself. And no athletes are probably sitting here talking to you on these things if they're not believing in themselves. Because at the end of the day, like Coach Cook can't want this for me. Eventually he can want it for me, but eventually Jaylen has to want and believe in himself, So I would say Jaylen, if I'm being flat out honest. And if somebody, I would think every successful individual, whether it's business, sports, writing a book, at the end of the day, they have to believe in themselves first. Because if they don't, who will?
The one you look in the mirror, that's for sure. What part of your journey makes you the most grateful today?
Well, today, because it's cold outside, I was grateful to grow up in Hawaii, if I'm being honest. I was not like, and I'm a lot more grateful for today and when it's really cold, like last week, So,
yeah, Friday I had
to know. There's a lot to be
grateful for. Friday I was out moving in that. Ugh.
I don't really have like a favorite fate, like, I just think all of it, So, but yeah, when it's cold outside, I'm like, man, being at home right now would be kind of nice.
When this chapter of you becoming the associated head coach for Nebraska gets written in years from now, what do you hope the players say about the coach, not the wins?
That he believed in me, at the end of the day, he believed in me and he wanted, he did everything he possibly could to make me better in every single way.
When you look at the announcement and your new position, what does that mean for Husker fans to understand, and kind of where does that sit for your future?
I don't know. I just hope they, I guess for me, I hope they know that, but I hope they knew this already, that I really love this place, and I think this is the greatest volleyball program ever. I hope they already knew that before this announcement,
Yeah,
so,
no, they.
And then what it means for my future, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out tomorrow. So I have no idea, if I'm being out loud. If you could probably call Danny would probably have a better idea when it comes to that. But all joking aside, I know like there's a little more details in this one in terms of the certain years or whatever. I'm just year to year, and hopefully we can achieve the goals we're trying to set out and achieve next year. So I'm super focused on that, but at the same time, super grateful to be here.
Well, once again, I'll get you out on this, but we'll give a quick shout out. Once again, find Wired Access, All Access Granted. You can find the series on CarrikerChronicles.com. Go and check them out on their podcast. This StreamYard is also powered by Your Omaha Beef. They're starting their season March 7th. Coach, don't know if you've ever done arena football, but it is live action all the time. More than welcome to come check it out sometime down in Ralston Arena. I know you've been there a couple times, especially volleyball. But we'll get you out of here on this. If a young Nebraska athlete is watching this right now, chasing a dream but doubting themselves, what do they need to hear?
I don't know. I kind of said it. Believe in yourself. No one can really take that away from you, and just keep dreaming big.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for your messages for those athletes who watch this. As long as we can reach one athlete, one parent who might be understanding that they don't have all the answers. There's coaches, there's athletes out there that are willing to share their journey. And we got coach here, Jaylen Reyes, who explained how going from men's volleyball playing turned himself into a associated head coach for women's volleyball in the top of what would you say, the echelon of women's volleyball for the state of Nebraska. So we greatly appreciate having you on, Jaylen, and we'll be watching for you.
Thanks.
The standard is the standard. We set the standard.